To celebrate the start of the season, we've teamed up with Sky Bet. Sky Bet understand the emotional roller coaster that's being a football fan. It will lift you up, break you down, and stitch you back together with hope. But we'll do it all again next week because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes of a last-minute winner. Not for everyone, for the fans. Sky Bet. 18 plus gambleaware.org. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the League One Lowdown here on the Deck Podcast Network. Myself, Jamie Johnson, here, as always, with Seb Jones. Seb, how are you?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Jamie. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good as well, thanks. And there is, as always, I think we always say, plenty to talk about this week and perhaps a very early call for some manager sacking potential. So we're going to come on to that quite quickly, actually. That's going to be our first game. But we're going to talk, as always, our 6 games in detail and then a roundup of the other results later on. And we're going to kick off with Plymouth beating Blackpool 1-0. And before the game, Tom Cleverley was under a little bit of stress, if you like. They had a dreadful start to the season, of course. And now getting their first win, that pressure seems to have shifted onto Steve Bruce. Just one win, 4 defeats they have in their first 5 games of the season. Whilst Tom Cleverley gets that monkey off his back. But Steve Bruce in that little bit of trouble now, and those conversations starting to be had, I think, in the fan base. That is.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I guess we'll come on to chatting about Plymouth in just a moment or so. But yeah, first, I guess for Blackpool, disappointing start to the season. Really, as you mentioned, just one victory in 5 games so far this season. The rest have all been defeats. That's 4 defeats out of 5 league games. I guess to top of that, they even went out in round 1 of the Carabao Cup as well. So it's not been a great start to the season at all for a Blackpool. If you are a Blackpool fan, and it sort of surprises me really because they finished the season really strongly last year, and I know they didn't get the playoffs. They had a bit of a weird season last year, but actually, if you look at that final stretch, they did really well. They got quite a lot of wins sort of together in a row. They played some really good football. They had Ennis and Bloxham that was sort of impressing as well for them. And we obviously you have what's it called? You got the midfielder, the guy that always scores. Not Honeyman, the guy there last year. I honestly, his name has Evans. That's it, Evans. He had Evans sort of in the
like a pop quiz, that.
It was absolutely, yeah. Sort of running the park quite often at the back end of last season. We just haven't seen that same form at the start of this season. Obviously, they've made some signings over the summer. They just haven't clicked so far. You know, we spoke the other week about their back line, and again, just hasn't quite gelled at the moment. But something has got to change quickly for Blackpool, really, because Steve Bruce won't be happy. The Blackpool fans won't be happy. And there are 2 fixtures coming up, both at home, but against 2 big sides. So it's Bolton and then there's Luton and the next 2 fixtures for Blackpool. And that concerns me if I was a Blackpool fan, really, because they've struggled to get results against sort of, they got squeezed past Huddersfield with their only victory with 10 men, but they lost to Mansfield during the midweek. They lost to Plymouth on Saturday. Doesn't bode well for them going forward.
Yeah, and they've obviously made a really poor start to the season, and it came as a little bit of a surprise because in their final pre-season game, before the start of the season, they played Doncaster and looked pretty solid, and it looked like stuff had started to gel in terms of those new signings, and it was all starting to work. And then the actual proper football started, and it's all seemed to have gone out of the window. And those defensive issues have been a real theme so far. That not so much in this one. Only the 1 goal, of course, conceded, but they didn't create very much. And Plymouth probably should have scored a few more than they did. It was Boateng who scored the goal in the second half. Their new recruit for Plymouth, Tolad, the striker, they brought him from Port Vale. he should have scored in the first half. He got 16 goals during his 46-game spell with Port Vale, the new number 9. He's had a very quick ascent up the leagues, if you like. Just a couple of seasons ago, he was playing for Aldershot in the National League. He scored 25 goals that season and sort of moved himself into the EFL and now up to what should be the top end of League One with the Plymouth side. So you've got that backdrop of Plymouth really sort of that bit of momentum in terms of the signing in the week and that bit of extra added into the squad. And then Blackpool at the other side of things are really starting to struggle. I know they've got a couple of injuries, but I think the main absentee, of course, was Niall Ennis after his suspension last week, and perhaps that is the reason I would give and the caveat, if you like, that they've had this really poor start defensively. That perhaps has been sorted. They defended quite well, down to 10 men against Huddersfield last week, conceded just the 1 goal here, but they haven't been able to score, and perhaps that is because they're missing Niall Ennis for these next few games because of his suspension.
Yeah, but maybe that in line is a problem, really, because they are so reliant on Ennis. I guess the other attackers in the club, you've got Ashley Fletcher that is still there, got Dale Taylor that came in over the summer from Wigan, but he sort of only grabbed 11 goals last season, so he's not going to be sort of the star man. And I guess you've got George Honeyman that we mentioned earlier on, but he also is not sort of he's not he's a star man, but he's not sort of going to get you 25 goals a season like perhaps now Ennis could. So it's maybe that over reliance on Ennis potentially is Blackpool's downfall. They do have quality across the pitch, but no one really as a direct replacement to step up to Ennis. I guess in this case because of suspension, but if he was to get injured or if I don't know, who knows? He went elsewhere in January, maybe. I know he's only just signed a sort of permanent deal, but who knows if there's other clubs sniffing out for him, then he could potentially jump ship. So it's just having more attacking options, really, and more quality in those attacking options. You mentioned the back line, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, but seriously, for up front, for me, I mentioned this last year, I was never really sort of that taken really by Blackpool's attacking options, and they need to strengthen it in those attacking areas before the deadline closes for sure.
There you go, putting your flag to the mast there. I'm going to ask you to put your flag to the mast one more time. It's something we spoke about in our WhatsApp group about Steve Bruce's immediate future. I'm going to fall on the side of things and say he isn't in danger right now because there are too many caveats in terms of the reasons why they've lost these opening few games. But how do you see it? Do you think his job is in threat?
I think with defeat next week, yes. There's obviously potential that the Luton game could be called off because of international call-ups. We're not sort of quite sure on that one yet.
I think that one has been called off.
Oh, it has been. Obviously, a big bad, yeah. So then, yes, even more doubly so, because defeat at Bolton next week would make it 5 defeats from 6 so far this season. And it was a similar point last year where the Blackpool board had enough of their previous manager and then brought in Steve Bruce. So history could repeat itself. I guess the international break can work in either favour, really. It could give Bruce a bit of time with his players in terms of reinforcing what he wants and his expectations. But then also, if a new manager were to come in, then there's time for the new manager to sort of embed his style, etc. on Blackpool. So yeah, definitely with defeat next week at Bolton, I think he is in big trouble. I guess just before I move on as well, I guess just to praise Plymouth, because that was their first league victory of this season, themselves having sort of not managed a victory, so that lost all of their games in the league prior to that. So for them to get off the mark, you mentioned right at the top, cleverly under a bit of pressure, for them to get that first 3 points of the season, and I sort of played pretty well as well. Good finish in the end to grab all 3 points, and yeah, impressive display. And I think Tom Cleverly will be a relief man.
Yeah, no, I think that is for sure. Moving on to our second game, it's Stockport County, 2-1 victory for them against Burton Albion, which on the face of it reads as an expected result, but there is much more to it than that. Brad Hills was sent off in the 31st minute. They were already 1-0 down and then taken down the last man down to 10 men as well, but somehow Stockport managed to turn it around. Jack Diamond with a nice finish, and then Oliver Norwood with an impeccable free kick. That one was a superb goal. There's been some real stunners just this weekend.
Yeah,
But that goal of the weekend for me, and making this really unlikely victory from a goal and a man down. Burton, I beg your pardon, made to rue a good few missed chances, especially early on in the game, and Stockport pulling out a really impressive victory.
yeah, and I guess continuing that momentum that we saw last season, really, in terms of anything that was thrown their way, they seemed to be able to bullet past, and whether there was any sort of adversity, and obviously in this game we've had they've had the red card against them, they've had the goal against them, and to come back from that sort of shows the quality and shows the togetherness as well, in terms of, although they have gone down to 10, just that collective nature, that team spirit, which I think Dev Chandler really sort of does a really good job in instilling that in his players, and that togetherness and team spirit to get, to get that 3 points, albeit, with some moments of quality in there. You mentioned the 2 goals, but particularly that Norwood strike, superb set piece from a player who himself sort of full of quality. And yeah, it's just really impressive for Stockport. I think, as I mentioned, sort of continuing that positive momentum that they had last season. It could have gone either way for them, I think, over summer, because they obviously lost out in the way that they did last season, sort of having been probably the favourites in the playoffs, and then not go up at all and to not even make the final. That would have disappointed them, the fans and players, and Dave Challoner as well. So they had to use that as a bit of motivation. And I guess so far this season, they have managed to do so. We've got only 1 defeat in 5. I don't think that's bad going at all. 3 victories in the league and 1 draw as well. That's pretty good going, and sitting 6th place in the 5th place in the table, beg pardon. So yeah, it could have been make or break the summer, but they've managed to use that momentum. And as I mentioned, sort of in this game, to have things go against them in the way that they did, to then come back just shows sort of what they're all about, really, and definitely a force to be reckoned again. They brought in Mothersill, brought in Lowe over the summer, and they've just sort of added to their attacking options, and yeah, plays of real quality.
Yeah, especially in terms of Lowe coming in, of course, did so well at Walsall on loan last season, winning a good few awards, even though he left in
Yeah,
January. It was sort of how
yeah,
well he did in that first portion of the campaign. For him now to be at Stockport is a real coup for them in terms of being able to attract him to the football club on that loan deal and being trusted with furthering his development. And he is able to patch up those Louis Barry holes that they never did patch
yeah.
up
No,
in
yeah.
terms of a like-for-like recruit the back end of last season, but managed to spread those goals around more effectively. And that has continued. The goals are being spread around that team, though. It's nice to have that person that they can rely on. He was one of
Yeah,
the players taken off not too long after the red card. A
yeah, and
bit
then
of shuffling of the pack.
and then another double change at half time. I think it sort of shows that adaptability and changing, and I think the shifting formation as well. So that sort of, adapting when things are going against them, I think, is a really good trait for the Stockport team to have. And you mentioned Lowe there, to be able to bring in a player of his quality. Yes, he was sort of made that unfortunate man in terms of sacrificing the player, so that they could have that sort of solid back line. But there's no doubt in his quality, to sort of have Jack Diamond and Mothersill as the attacking options still on the pitch, I think is really good going. Yeah, so actually quite impressive from Challoner to do 2 changes after the red card, and then 2 more changes at half time. It's quite a risk, but a risk that paid off for Stockport, really.
Yeah, definitely. And a quick word on Burton before we do move on. They have just the 1 win in the league this season, that on the opening day against Mansfield, defeated against Barnsley, and now, of course, Stockport, a point at home to Port Vale as well. They have played 1 less game than everybody else because their original EFL Cup tie was postponed. So their game against Rotherham was, as a result of that, postponed because they had to push things back by a week. They did get through on penalties in the EFL Cup, but in the league, it's not been all rosy so far this season, and they need to try and find something, don't they? Just to kick on a little bit, you'd say, even though we can temper everything by saying it's very early stages of the season. I mean, the transfer window still hasn't shut yet, but they need a bit of a spark, don't they?
They do. They need something. Obviously, I guess the 2 big sparks that they had last season, in terms of Bodvarsson and Burrell, are now not at the club. So they need need other sparks to help them. I know they brought Beasley in as well and Tyree Shade, but they're not sort of yet to step up really. They need something to just a moment of quality, just to sort of give them a positive result. And yeah, they'll be disappointed. They want to use the momentum they got at the back of the last season to sort of push them on another level this season. But so far that's yet to be the case. But they'll get there. You know, obviously they're under good management, and they probably will get a couple of more additions in as well before the close of the window. So I think they'll be fine. But you're right, it's not been the best of start for Burton Albion.
Moving on to Huddersfield then, and the substitutes make the difference, again, is the way I would describe their victory. 1-0 against Stevenage, who were, of course, the only team with a 100% record before that game. And it was a similar story on Tuesday night. They played Doncaster, and there were differences and similarities. First, the difference being that Doncaster were on top in that game for the first 65, 70 minutes, whereas in this game against Stevenage, it was certainly Huddersfield who had the vast majority of the control. But then the substitutes came, and that is where the similar story translates, because the substitutes have been able to propel Huddersfield on to victory. They did that against Doncaster, and they've done that again against Stevenage, and that is a great showing of how much strength in depth they have. And Lee Grant has at his disposal that he's able to bring on these players. I mean, I remember on Tuesday night, they brought on a triple change of Ben Wiles, Lass Sorensen and Joe Taylor. And when you're looking at that, 20 minutes to go, 0-0 away from home, you're thinking, well, this is only going to go one way. And Huddersfield have that at their disposal, and they're using it really quite effectively. Sorensen, who I mentioned there, and Herbie Kane were the two who got the most plaudits from this victory here. But another clean sheet as well for Huddersfield. It can't be taken away from them. And they're just looking very good. And that depth is the real key and the sort of the source of their success so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I for one, sort of, I'm an advocate really in terms of Huddersfield's quality. I think across the pitch, I mentioned this before, across the pitch, there's quality in that starting 11, but then there's quality on the bench as well to come off and make that difference and to make that change. And for those sort of changes to be the difference 2 games in a row, I think is really good going and certainly sort of puts Huddersfield as one of the favourites, really, in terms of, come the end of the season, maybe. But yeah, just basic quality, just coming off the bench, got the likes of Joe Taylor, Sean Rohan obviously came off as well, and Lyndon Gooch, who not too long ago was in the Premier League with Sunderland. So that sort of level of quality is a difference, really, in terms of other League One clubs like Stevenage sort of were unable to get past them, and Huddersfield bring on these sort of players and they make the difference. And yes, it was a player that was on the pitch already that got the goal, but it was sort of, I'm sure, helped by the players that came off and sort of were the game changers.
It's just not having those fresh legs, isn't it? It's been able to bring on players who are of the same quality as those players already on the pitch.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, Huddersfield have got that in abundance, really, which other sides won't have. And I guess, hats off to Lee Grant, first managerial job, really. Question marks were sort of thrown his way when he went in. But so far, only 1 defeat in the league in 5 games. Managed to get through Championship side Leicester as well in the Carabao Cup. So it's all looking rosy. I guess the only 1 defeat was away to Blackpool when Blackpool were down to 10 that we spoke about earlier, so they perhaps could have got through. But other than that, it's been pretty plain sailing. In all the wins as well, 4 victories, 4 clean sheets, which Lee Grant as a former goalkeeper, I'm sure will be very pleased with that. But yeah, so you mentioned there in terms of another clean sheet in this one, Chris, credit to Owen Goodman in goal, 5 saves, 5 big saves to prevent Stevenage going ahead, who themselves will be disappointed with the result. But yeah, it's all clicking nicely for Huddersfield at the moment.
Yeah, and the goalkeeper you mentioned there, of course, one of the summer sort of additions. He is of real quality and makes a big difference to that team. And it can't be forgotten, as much attacking and striker options they do have, having a good goalkeeper at the back of things.
To celebrate the start of the season, the League One Lowdown podcast has teamed up with Sky Bet to celebrate the world's wildest emotional rollercoaster, being a football fan. Sky Bet understand the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. It'll lift you up, break you down, and stitch you back together with hope. Because for all the pain of a looming relegation or a missed penalty, There's nothing quite like the absolute scenes of a last-minute winner that leaves you hugging people you've never met in your life. For me, I remember being relegated from the EFL, but I'd happily go through all that again to relive the last 7 years of 2 league titles. Being a fan isn't for everyone. Some people say it's just a game and question why we shout at the TV or stand in the pouring rain just to see our team lose 1-0. But those who get it, there's nothing quite like it. The highs and lows, the heartache and the glory. It's all part of the ride. And is it worth it? You bet it is. Not for everyone, for the fans. Sky Bet, 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
Is key as well. As for Stevenage, I think this one is a little bit of a. I think reality check is too harsh a word to describe it, because they were doing miraculously to be where they were to start with those opening few games of the season. But when they're coming up against these teams who have a much more money and much more resource and much thicker squads, they're going to come up short. And that isn't a negative for Stevenage at all. And the fact that it was 1-0 is probably a positive, really, for a team who have a much lower budget.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is not playing down any sort of result at all for Stevenage, but the recent sides that they've beaten, Port Vale, Stevenage, and Rotherham. I guess Rotherham you could sort of perhaps put as the an anomaly in that one, but none of the sides really lack much quality in terms of being sides that are going to be up there come the end of the season that have that depth and have a quality that perhaps Huddersfield do. So yeah, you're right in terms of it's been a great start to the season. Don't get me wrong for Stevenage, but also I guess playing a side that have the quality and depth like Huddersfield do. Yes, sort of they've been stopped in the tracks a little bit because they've just been playing against a side that just have that quality and that just have that extra difference that in a game, really. So yeah, just unlucky for Stevenage. They can't read too deep in this after what's been a great start to the season.
Yeah, definitely that. And you wouldn't say great start to the season, but a bit inconsistent, in and out perhaps for these two teams. Rotherham United and Wigan Athletic. It finished 2-2, and it was a game of two halves, really. Rotherham really coming into it after the break, and their new signings beginning to gel. Malik Sheriff, who came in this week on loan, a really calm finish for his goal. Sean McWilliams coming on at half time made a real difference as well. He was the scorer of the other goal, and that positive of Sheriff, one of the new signings, scoring is definitely there for Rotherham. But on the other side of things, they weren't able to hold on to that lead they managed to build for themselves, because Paul Mullin, right at the end, snatched a point back for Wigan, and how much of a threat they are now with a goal scorer up front. So the points shared at a topsy-turvy game, you'd say, at the New York Stadium.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Rotherham needed Sheriff to come in because they've had so many injury worries already at the start of the season. Sam Numbit out injured, Atete out injured as well. So it meant that they only really had Jordan Hugill as a striking option. So yeah, they brought in Sheriff during the week and straight into the starting 11 and straight on the goals as well. And I guess what a way to mark your debut, really, in terms of in Rotherham United colours, on loan from Premier League side Everton, only 19 years of age, and to come on sort of and make the difference that he did. Incredible stuff, really. And as you said, sort of following on from that, McWilliams with his first goal for Rotherham United as well. And what finished out was sort of just outside the area on the half volley. So great little sort of couple of finishes for Rotherham United. But they will be disappointed in terms of the goals that they conceded. The first one, an own goal from Sean Raggett. It went in off. It was like a cross come shot from Trevitt, and then it seemed to be I guess held by Dawson and then ricocheted off Raggett into the goal. So they'll be disappointed to concede a goal of that nature. They'll also be disappointed to concede so late. We know that the quality that Paul Mullin possesses, but you can't leave him. He was just sort of stood by himself, just a few yards from the goal line from a set piece, and you can't leave a player of his quality sort of just by himself as close to goal as that, really. So that would disappoint Rotherham. I guess probably draw is about fair, but sort of positive signs for both sides, really. in terms of Wigan having that fight back spirit and that comeback nature to rescue a point, I think will be good going. And then like we mentioned earlier, for Rotherham for their 2 quality finishes, including one from their new signing. So yeah, positives for both sides, but also negative for both sides as well.
Yeah, and Martin Sheriff, I mean, you mentioned his youth there, and it was a performance coming on, playing, I beg your pardon, the full game beyond his level of experience. And the other thing I wanted to mention for him, there was a very funny interview of him during the week talking about his singing, like sort of induction to the squad, initiation, however you want to put it. So he seems a good character as well, and gets an important goal for his side on debut. Moving across to one of the more interesting results of the weekend, I think. This one, Mansfield against Leyton Orient. It finished 4-1 to the home side, and it was 2 teams playing complete opposites level in terms of energy, because Mansfield were full of it and really well organised, whereas Leyton Orient looked lethargic and really quite slow. And that came and did them in the end. It finished 4-1, as I mentioned. The other thing to mention was Regan Henry's brace, one of those coming from the halfway line, a quite spectacular goal. But Mansfield really impressing here.
Yeah, and that's now 3 wins in a row for Nigel Clough's side. So really impressive. They've been disappointed with how the season started 2 defeats on the bounce, and then to come back from that and now get 3 victories, I guess 4 if you include the cup win away at Chesterfield as well. But really good going for Mansfield Town. I mean, I'll come on to Leyton Orient in a second, but they were helped by some defensive performances for Leyton Orient, but absolutely to score 4 goals at home, and every time they came forward, they looked like scoring. They just had that fire in their bellies, that momentum, and just to attack really, which we'd not really seen right at the start. And on form, 2 goals from Henry that you've already mentioned, a goal from Will Evans as well. Great result for Mansfield Town, really, to sort of thump aside as they did, albeit against 10 men, you can only beat what's in front of you, and they've absolutely done that, and sort of got a cracking result at home, and made it 3 wins in a row. So great performance, couple of great finishes in there. You mentioned Hendry's for one from halfway, Evans as goal was nicely taken as well, and then I guess the 4th goal is sort of. It was a case of who, basically. There's about 3 or 4 shots at goal, and they all seemed to be saved, and one hit the post, I think, and then Bolton was there to get the final sort of his strike managed to go over the goal line. So they're all basically queuing up to see who could score. But that sort of really impressive display, really impressive result. As I mentioned, they were helped by Leyton Orient, but yeah, great win.
Yeah, on Leyton Orient then, you mentioned how lacking of energy they were. They showed a bit of naivety as well, that red card that went against them, and some really shoddy defending, especially for that last goal. The game probably gone by that point, of course, but even still, you've got to keep switched on in those sort of moments. There is work to do for them before the end of the window, I think, in terms of both ins and outs. They probably need someone else to help Connolly up front, even though he has not started the season badly. He needs probably a little bit of help there. And something Sam mentioned, I spoke to Sam after this one. He went across, made the trip up to Mansfield, and he thinks perhaps that one of the issues being that a lot of those players weren't featuring very often last season, who are now become, by sort of not accident, but by the virtue of a lot of players moving on, become first team regulars, that they're not used to playing and haven't had recent experience of playing the Tuesday, Tuesday, which already in this season we're into a real flow of 2 games a week. And that's a big change and a big reassessment, readjustment. And against a very physical Mansfield side, it's a difficult thing to do as well. So that is an excuse, obviously, and not something that is any sort of consolation, but it's something they need to work on quite quickly, and adding a few extra players before the end of the window might be the key to solving that particular issue.
Yeah, I take that, but I just think some of the defending that that was on display, you can't really excuse. You mentioned that last goal, but also the first goal, albeit strike from sort of the halfway line, but they gave the ball away really cheaply, really easily. The same with the second goal, I think it was. They gave the ball away, and the third goal actually, they gave the ball away in their own half, and sort of the Mansfield Town player ran down the byline, put a ball in, and they were there to finish it off. So I take your point in terms of they're not used to starting Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. But I just think surely the manager would have known that, and surely preparation should have been done to sort of avoid that. Maybe I don't know really.
My point being that they can't avoid it because they don't have that quality in depth.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. But that's the reason the manager should plan ahead of that in terms of we're in the last week of the window to sort of to do something about it. But he knew right at the start of the season that there would be sort of Saturday, Tuesday fixtures, as is the case every season, I guess. So for me, I don't want to go in on too much because it's just a blip result. For me, I think that's a lack of planning from managerial point of view in terms of not recruiting ahead of time in terms of having that depth and that quality, I guess, and options off the bench, which you already spoke about for other clubs, has been so valuable, really, that Leyton Orient just don't have. I guess the one positive was Josh Caroma grabbing his first goal since signing in the summer, and that was to make it 2-1, but it just sort of went downhill from there, from an Orient perspective.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting debate, and I'm sure Sam will carry that on the preview show with Callum later in the week. We'll turn our attention to the final of our 6 games we're going to talk about in detail, and it is one of the promoted sides. It is one we haven't spoke about an awful lot about here on the review show, and it is AFC Wimbledon. Another impressive result for them. They beat Barnsley 2-0 at home. Hackford, the substitute, he scored the second of the game after Matty Stevens in the first half. He's already scored 3 this season. And has hit the ground running after promotion from League Two. David McGoldrick went closest for Barnsley. Probably should have scored before they went 1-0 down. He had 2 or 3 chances during the game. But as soon as Hackford scored that second with 20 minutes to go, it really did kill the contest off as Wimbledon able to see it out. And they are in the top half alongside Doncaster and Bradford in terms of those promoted sides. Port Vale, the only one of the 4 who haven't started the season strongly. But before we move on to Barnsley, and of course I will force you to talk about Barnsley. Wimbledon looking good in these early stages, and Johnny Jackson saying similar, that his side is showing that they have that quality in League One.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really. 3 wins from 5 league games so far this season. A couple of big victories as well. Obviously, victory at home at Lincoln, and then home at Barnes. Obviously, the weekend just gone in the middle of that, and away a victory at Reading as well. So beating sort of good quality sides that have been in League One for a while, and for them to just come up from League Two over the summer and already possess such a threat already, I think is really good going. And to beat, not to allude to it too much, but I guess Barnsley were on a great run of form, yet to suffer defeat, and Wimbledon would have gone into this one sort of not as favourites. Barnsley would sort of set in terms of grabbing a result from this one, and we're going against the odds Wimbledon, but that's what they're doing. That's what the sides that come up from League Two have got to do. They've got to ruffle some feathers a little bit. You mentioned sort of 3 of the clubs that have come up are already in that top half, and that's really good going. Really, something that we've not really seen before. I guess we saw last year, but part of that was because of Wrexham. I'm not talking about them too much, so you're all right. But I get it's really impressive, really, Wimbledon, to get the result they did. They've obviously got players that have played in this league before. So Marcus Brown starting up top, and Bishop as well as had time in this division, and he stood tall between the sticks. So yeah, great result for Wimbledon, and I guess it sees them in the top half, which they'll be really pleased about. Johnny Jackson and sort of the fans as well. Result no one saw coming, but that's why we love the League One.
Yeah, and they've taken us by surprise a little bit. I think we expected Doncaster and Bradford to be in and around mid-table. That they've both, Bradford even more so, have overperformed that in these early stages. But Wimbledon in that mix as well. It is early doors, and we're still waiting for everything to settle back down. There are still a lot of these back and forth results in terms of the league, but they're looking good so far at Wimbledon, and Barnsley are as well. And this game really just a stumbling block, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I hope so. Yeah, it's sort of first league defeat of the season, first defeat, I guess, across anything so far this season. And from what I gather, I think it's just one of those days, really. You know, the players had not turned up. Really, it was unchanged from the midweek victory away at Peterborough, and Conor Harron's come out afterwards saying, you know, I gave the boys the benefit of the doubt. That by the sounds of things, he won't be doing that again. In terms of there's going to be some changes ahead of each game. I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's probably his mantra. But clearly, the sort of the team have not backed him in getting that performance and getting the result. So yeah, a bit of a blip, unexpected, and disappointing. I think really to put it bluntly, to go to a side that have just got promoted, and to lose, I think it will disappoint Hurrihan, but that is obviously, you know, credit to Wimbledon, and the two goals, again, not to take away from Wimbledon, but the two goals I think defensively Barnsley were quite poor from, particularly Josh Earl for the first one, just didn't win his header at all, didn't really chance for it, and then Jack Shepherd for the second one, the Wimbledon attacker was too easy to just glide past. That was Hackford's finish, so too easy for Hackford to glide through. So poor at the back defence for Barnsley, but Wimbledon took advantage and deservedly got the win.
Normal service resuming for Barnsley, I see.
Thanks for that. Cheers. Yeah.
Elsewhere then, Luton Town, they lost 1-0 to Cardiff City in the other early kickoff alongside the Rotherham Wigan game. Chris Willock, the difference maker. There was 1-1 between Bolton and Lincoln, an unlucky 97th minute own goal from Tom Hamer, securing a point after Freddie Draper scored in the very first minute of the game. He's started the season very strongly and in really good goal-scoring form. There was late drama at Peterborough as well. They secured a point late on against Bradford, being able to avoid the pecked by the chickens Twitter storm.
I've seen that. That's funny.
It's very good. Doncaster, a victory for them against Port Vale. Owen Bailey with his third of the campaign already. And the Rob Quhig derby, I'm calling it. Wycombe Reading, that finished 2-2. Lewis Wing, the pick of the goals there, with the points shared. And then Northampton Town picking up their first victory of the campaign. 2 goals in the opening 20 minutes as they beat Exeter City. Some interesting results in that batch there. Wycombe picking up a point, but they're still yet to pick up victory this season. Reading, we can say the same for.
Yeah, interesting, really. Sort of two sides that you thought would be up there. I guess it does put question marks over Wycombe and their manager, which we on this show spoke quite a bit about last year in terms of the quality he possesses, or maybe lack of quality he possesses. And for them to not grab a win so far this season would be concerning. For Reading as well, they'll be disappointed, I guess, because of the momentum they had last season. They've just not followed that through this season. And I know that, you know, that it's been a summer of change at the club, but yeah, still disappointing for either side to not get their first win. Question marks, I think, certainly at Wycombe. Certainly at Wycombe. Reading, I guess, you know, given the old cliche, there's still time, but certainly Wycombe, because the question marks were there last season in terms of their drop off. Yeah, question marks to the manager, I think, at Wycombe for me.
And I think the framing of that is completely different had they not scored that late equaliser, Wycombe, because they would have obviously lost, and then they're without a point, and Reading would have got that monkey off their back in terms of the victory. Yeah. So a late goal perhaps saving blushes for at least a couple more weeks. So we'll keep an eye on that one. I think to end on a bit of more of a bombshell that he's in more trouble, Mike Dodds, than Steve Bruce is. We spoke about at the start of the show. So we'll see how that progresses over the next few weeks. Plenty still to come, and keep an eye out for updates in terms of our deadline day scheduling on the 1st of September. Of course, the preview show will be back with Sam and Callum on Wednesday, Thursday, and then me and Seb will be back same time, same place next week here on the League One Lowdown. Thanks once again to our partners of this episode, Sky Bet. Sky Bet understand the beautiful chaos of being a football fan, the highs and lows, the heartache and the glory. It's all part of the ride, and we wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for everyone, for the fans. Sky Bet, 18+, gambleaware.org.